So, hey everyone, I am Anubhav Garg, a management trainee at Law Seco, and I welcome you all in our today's session how lawyers can create a digital footprint within the regulations of BCI. And as a subject matter expert, we have Dr. Arvind Singhatia sir with us, Aruna Chawla ma'am, and Subhash Bhutoria sir with us. So, starting with Arvind sir, he is the founder and CEO of Legal Card. Sir has this amazing work experience and a marvelous work experience at the top-notch companies like Ola, where he has been at a very senior positions like a corporate exec, like advisory and corporate advisor, and those. I can't even spell their names properly, but Sir has been on those positions. Aruna Chawla, ma'am, is the digital entrepreneur, and so she helps a lot of people make their virtual brands and ace their online game. Subhash sir is the partner at Treda Legal, and the the firm is specialized in fashion and sports law, and these are our esteemed panel for today's discussion. So, sir, let's get the ball rolling with knowing your journey uh, as the in your respective professions. Like, why you people choose to go independent in your career when you all were doing well, when you all were well placed in good companies, and what inspired you about law? What, like, we know that all of our careers is somehow related to law. So why this element of law, and what are your visions for our beloved legal fraternity, starting with, of course, Arvind sir.
All right, thank you, Anubhav. Thank you so much. It's been like 13 plus years when I've worked with corporates across verticals. I worked with Metro Cash and Carry, which is a German wholesaler. I worked with Transportation and Logistics, which is Ola Cabs. I worked with SL Group and ECME, which is a solar power technology company. See, the common thread that was running across these companies, and these are just the the most important challenge. I mean, whenever we start a enterprise, a company, the objective of that company is to solve a problem which is prominent, which is recurring, and which is across the sectors or maybe across geographies. We My personal experience gave me the idea that there is a common problem which is across the industries, is access to a legal service provider on demand. Now we have so many lawyers. I mean, as per Bar Council of India, there are more than 15 lakh registered lawyers in India, right? But accessing them is something which is a very big challenge. One, because of the inherent regulations that are there, and two, I think there is no technology platform available for them where they can, present themselves, where we be able to find them. And it's very heartening to see that now, even a food delivery guy is on technology. Now a doctor is on technology. Now a driver is on technology. I think now a plumber is also on technology, who is available on demand, right? But then there is, uh, I realize that every important stakeholder in this country is now moving towards technology, and the reason why they wanted to move on technology is sheer scale of operations, right? In earlier days when technology was not there, the operations scale was not that big. Let's say lawyer in Rajasthan, Jaipur was catering only to Jaipur clients, and in that also in his geographical catchment area of 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers. As we grew, as I can see that we have so many participants from across the country, so my scale is really big now. I can reach out anywhere. We need technology for that. You just can't sit at your office and reach out to millions of people in one go. So it is all the more important to become savvy to technology. And that's the reason, right from food retailing companies to transportation and logistics to medical field, it is time for lawyers to come on board to and adopt the technology and to expand their practice. I have heard lawyers saying that, I mean, there are many restrictions in the court practice. In Gurgaon, let's say, a lawyer can always raise an objection that a Delhi registered lawyer will not be practicing in Gurgaon. Right. I think this is something which is basically trying to circumvent, uh, the 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 freedom of practice for a lawyer anywhere in the country. right? Now with the help of technology, it will be possible. It will happen very soon. We have seen many examples in the past. So now coming back to the reason that why I moved into this, I realized that there is a problem and we need a solution for that. I worked for Ola Cabs for more than 4 years, and I have seen them growing from 200 cabs to like 1 lakh cabs, from few hundred drivers to lakhs of drivers using the technology. I realized that when these people can be available online, why not lawyers should be available online? So that's the starting point, and then based on the experience that when we want lawyer, why we want lawyer, how we want lawyer, all the whats and hows when answered, we were able to create a business model around it.
All right. Now coming to Aruna, ma'am. Ma'am, what was uh, your drive behind coming to the field of digital entrepreneurship? Like, why? I know that you are very well versed with the law and you could have gone to a top tier one law firm easily, but why you choose to come in the field of digital entrepreneurship?
So, interesting you say that, I'm the youngest on the panel. Last month, I completed 2 years of my graduation. So, I'm not that far off in my work experience. Uh, I grew up in the world of the internet, right? I was 4 years old when I got my first computer, and that was connected to the internet. So, I've never known a life without connectivity. That's what I've grown up with, which is why for me getting into digital entrepreneurship wasn't something I had to choose. It was just the life that I'd always led, being connected to people from across the world, studying online through I was in college when Coursera or edX were available, or online platforms were available. I remember in one of my internships back in third year, I presented a matter in front of the India's disciplinary committee. Sitting in Delhi, I was able to do that. My clients at that time were in Bengal. This was a football team that I had represented. So for me, I've never known a life without the internet, right? So for me, it was a no-brainer. Getting into law school was because I loved solving problems. So the two options I kept for myself were either law school or business school, right? It wasn't that I want to go to court or I want to go to a corporate law firm. That was never the goal. The idea was only solving problems. And I realized that a lot of times what happens with lawyers is that when you talk about a case, the first thing a lawyer would think that, you end up in courts, but that's not actually true. Subhash and I worked together, and we discussed so much about these things that there have to be stages of resolution of resolving disputes before you get to the court in the first place at all. So that encouraged me to not go the traditional way, which is why I focused on being a legal consultant and a legal educator, and started working with the United Nations as an art law and fashion law expert. I've been working with them for almost 2 years now. I've trained artists in Europe on legal and business development for their artistic caliber. I've also written a lot on it, conducted a lot of workshops in India. Um, in all of this, my love for storytelling never died. I'm somebody who loved reading and telling stories and listening to stories, right? And growing up on the internet, I realized that a lot of people don't know how to tell the right story. Even as a lawyer, knowing how to strategize what point to present in front of the court, telling the right story in the right manner is extremely important, right? For you to make or break your case. And that's something that I was always really fond of. And I thought this is a great problem area that I can start solving for people. So today I work not only with in my digital entrepreneurial role, I work not only with lawyers, but also with other businesses, with other people who are coaches, consultants, small businesses, independent experts who are trying to build their personal brand, for example, in three aspects. One is branding, one is strategic marketing, and the third being organic PR. Um, which is and I am very specific about the area I work in, because I very strongly believe that you do not need to spend on ads or advertisements or paid ads, especially whether online or offline, to reach out to your audience. You can be very strategic about it. You can reach out to them in the right manner without having the additional expenses of advertisements. So that's where I
Precisely.
focus on.
All right. Great story, ma'am. And now Subhash sir. Sir, so you are a partner at Creda Legal at such a young age. And I also see that on your LinkedIn account you have 10 thousands of followers, and not only in the width game, you have also good in the depth game of your audience. Like there are some YouTube channels and there are some blogs which have very good numbers with them, but the audience, the quality of audience is not that good. They don't get insightful comments, people don't ask good questions, their posts don't get reshared. But that's not the case with Creator Legal's website, and that's not the case on your LinkedIn profile. How did you develop this right blend of a lawyer and uh, online online branding expert, I would say?
Well, that's very interesting stalking that you have done. I didn't know about the width and the depth game, but one thing is there are a couple of fundamentals as a lawyer that um, as basics of a lawyer is that to be fair, to be able to give a fair advice, to be truthful, be it your client, be it your colleague, be it your friend, and that's how it works. It works the same way as it works in brick and mortar. It works the same way in virtual space. So if I have to give you an example, uh, when I was working with a top tier firm, and there was an associate, and he wanted to write an article. He didn't realize that the firm was representing a client who was taking a completely contrary stand to that article. Now, when something like this happened, the firm does not have a choice but to, probably terminate your retainership. So you have to be cautious of your ecosystem, the clients that you retain, the clients that you represent. That your virtual presence, your personal presence, should not contradict, should not be contrary to your profession, your professional ethics, your circle. So that is something which, as a takeaway, everyone should be aware of when they are in virtual space. Um, when we started this whole conversation, and when you asked Dr. Singhatia and Aruna about how they got into a different individual personality of staying with law, but yes, creating their own niche.
Yeah.
When I was born in this profession, I was lucky to be part of a firm which was paperless. So for last 11 years that I continued this stride, and now because we have an ecosystem which is completely paperless, it does not become a new normal for us now. For past 3 months, it is the same day as it has been for last 11 years. So it is very important that we now don't look at virtual space or internet or technology as something which is different. It is a parallel. It is no more a parallel. It is an alternate. Uh, you need to have that button of switching on to whichever mode that you want. It should be city mode or power mode. It's like that. So if you are in brick and mortar, you can be brick and mortar. If you have to go on virtual space because you might not want to travel, you have your time constraint, you can go to Legal Cart and use their meeting schedulers. So things like that. So it's about switch on, switch off mode that you need to get onto now, and it has become a normal now. I won't say that it is a revolution. And in this startup age, we talk about disruptions. So I think for all these years, COVID has the biggest disruptor. I have not seen something which has disrupted everything across any stream of life
Yeah.
and has
Precisely.
created immense opportunities. Today, when we are sitting across and we are looking at each other from, I don't know, from everywhere. In fact, if you have followed me on the LinkedIn, a friend, Uwe, he's based out of Germany, and he messaged that he's interested in the webinar. So it has become a very, very different uh, play field, and we need to adopt it. We need to adapt to it, and it's not difficult. It's no rocket science. And it's fancy when you carry your iPads to argue the matter, and people really enjoy looking at you, that how you're doing it. Trust me, it is the most convenient thing I have ever learned in all my life.
All right, sir. So you also said कि this these last 6 months were not any different from you than the rest 11 years of your life, because you were well versed with the technology. You had the right understanding of the BCI regulations, and you have already understood this game of online brand building very well. Thus, you have this competitive advantage as well, because it's it's a common sense that people will go to the incumbent persons and not to the organizations or the entities who have just entered the market or who have just woke up on the face of change, right? So,
Yes. Well, so you need to understand that being adept to technology gives you an immense opportunity as an individual lawyer. People who are not part of law firms or like of the top tier firms, or who want to start their own, this is technology is providing them a very easy, convenient and effective solution. To give an example, like how you have become, like the other day I was talking, somebody messaged me that it's impressive how in the IP domain that everyone knows about you. I did not do anything. I only connected with people. That is what BCI allows you. The Bar Council of India, the Advocates Act, the rules, they allow you to make personal connects. They say word of mouth. What they don't allow is you cannot advertise, and that is only a duty to your colleague. So I cannot advertise because Aruna is also there, because Dr. Singhatia is also there, and that's why I should not be allowed to become Master Blaster. I should not at least call myself Master Blaster, but yes, I can connect with them. I can connect with Anubhav right here, right? So that is what technology is helping you with, that while in brick and mortar you would not be able to connect with more than say 10 people a day. If at all you are like going around the market and meeting everyone saying I am XYZ, even otherwise you will not meet. So if you take your notepad and count the number of people that you meet in a brick and mortar arrangement in a day or in a month, it will be nothing. It will be negligible to what you can do by sitting on Facebook, by doing your Insta, by going on LinkedIn. What is so that is how, as for individual lawyers or for law firms, for everyone,
precisely.
what is allowable as per the law is to connect, and technology is the best way to connect.
Understood. Understood. So, sir, speaking of the law and of BCI, we know that lawyers are not allowed to solicit the work under the BCI regulations. But even within these regulations, there are many things lawyers are allowed to do for their online promotion as a legal professional, which many of people don't have a clear-cut understanding. So, can you please explain to us where does this line of demarcation lies between creating an online brand or a digital footprint, as we call it, and soliciting the work? Starting with Sir Subhash, you.
So we need to understand one thing, that we have created a monster out of Advocates Act. I think it's one of the best piece of legislation which has stood tested times and has stood there. It's a well established law, and we should be thankful to our colonial presence who has given us this law, at least the intention. But yes, so we have created a monster in everyone's mind that BCI prohibits and restrains you from doing so many things. On the other hand, I would say if you ever look at the law and read it with its purpose and intent, it rather says that you please create connections. They allow you, they rather encourage you to make connections. They say word of mouth is the right way to go about it, and I think it makes a lot of sense, because maybe we have our presence online and people find us competent, but there are instances where the lawyer is not competent. It is the intern who is competent and writing good articles, which misleads the client to lead to a lawyer who probably just create a faux pas of the case. You would not want that. BCI does not want that, and nobody would want that, because at the end of the day you are serving as a noble professional. You are supposed to serve the justice, right? So I think it is very important that you understand the law as it stands is that you are allowed to make connections, personal connections. And that's what you do when you go onto these platforms like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. You are making personal connects, and that's the only thing. So the law is very broad. It does not classify like section 52 of of Copyright Act, which has like thousands of sub clauses to say that this is an exception, this is an exception. Advocates Act has no exceptions. It only says all you cannot do is you cannot advertise, you cannot promote yourself. And that is, if you read the head note, the title of the provision, if I talk about rule 36, it is duty to colleagues. It is not your obligation, it is duty to colleagues. It is to be fair to your colleagues, to your system, which has given you that certificate. I think it's a very fair point.
All right, sir. All right. So now coming to Arvind sir. Sir, Subhash sir has made it pretty clear that it's a duty to colleagues. So now can we understand this, as I put it, the line of demarcation with between creating an online brand and soliciting the work, if we can understood in the terms of don'ts and do's.
So I think, see, it is the way Subhash have elaborated the whole thing is really, he covered almost every aspect of it, and he made one thing very clear, that you should connect with the people, number one, and number two, I think it's the duty of the colleague to talk about you. See, the objective, if we just go a little deeper into the objective, that why a profession like legal, and it's not just legal, let me also tell you that even doctors are also not allowed to solicit, right? So these are two noble professions where the objective of these two professions is to make the other person get rid of the pain, be it a physical pain or a legal pain, right? And these two professionals are remembered only during the crisis time. You remember a doctor only when there is a medical crisis, and you remember a lawyer only when there is a emotional or a financial crisis that you are going through and you need support. And the objective of the law is, or objective of this clause is, to make sure that nobody should take advantage of a crisis situation. Somebody is in pain and then you are saying, okay, I'll give you a discount of 10%, come to me. Or somebody says that, I have taking the advantage of a crisis, something which is the worst case scenario possible for any kind of profession, so to say. And that's the reason the broad objective of Advocates Act is to ensure that nobody should be able to taking the advantage of someone's pain or crisis. There are many. We are a transition country. We are moving from a developing country, and we are still moving as a developing country only, and we will move for a long time as a developing country. The people, the population here need a lot of support in terms of in these two critical services which are essential, the legal service and the medical service. So the whole idea here is to ensure that lawyers should be able to connect with the people and should be able to connect with the people and should be able to solve the problems without getting into solicitation mode. Let's understand it from a simple example, and it'll be very easy for you to understand. Imagine a scenario where you are walking, you are in pain, and there are four doctors standing, and everybody is calling you towards you, and everybody have an offer for you. You are in pain, you have a fractured leg, and there are four doctors standing with different discount coupons with them, and come to me. This doesn't look even human, right? This is against humanity. Similarly, in legal scenario, it's not different from that, right? And that's the reason. Apart from that, if you connect with the people, if people know you through connections, if people know your knowledge, if you write articles where you talk about the cases that you were a part of it, or you understand that how a matter can take shape, if you talk about your court craft, if you talk about your understanding about a statute, if you talk about the understanding about a specific judgment which has a bigger impact on the society, I think that's enough for anybody in the society to understand that at what intellectual level you stand. Right? What is your understanding of law? How smart or how intelligent as a lawyer you are. you don't need any kind of solicitation. But how that can happen? I think Aruna, experts like Aruna would be the best people who can make that voice, heard across the population, and that is definitely not advertising and solicitation, right?
Exactly. So now coming to Aruna ma'am, even Arvind sir admits that you can be the best person to take this thing forward. So ma'am, what is your take on it? Ki where does this line of demarcation, what is the threshold that lawyers are allowed to do these things and they are not allowed to do these things? After this certain threshold, it will be counted as soliciting. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Absolutely. I think Subhash pointed out something extremely interesting, and I'll pick up from the Advocates Act itself. Rule 36 is not exhaustive, it is simply indicative, and we need to understand why did this rule come into place in the first go, right? The idea is that one, law is a noble profession, and like Dr. Singhatia also pointed out, that you reach out to lawyers only in the situations of crisis. Why would in terms of advertising, for example, if there's a lawyer who has a bigger bank balance, they will be able to have more of a budget for their marketing or advertising costs, which say smaller lawyers or younger lawyers who just started their careers wouldn't be able to have. Advertising always has a compounding effect, and we don't want the big fish to keep getting bigger, which is one of the reasons why you don't want advertisement of the work that you do. The second is, like Dr. Singhatia again pointed out, the quality of service has a chance of going down because lawyers can potentially give lower fees and or compromise on the quality of service itself to make way for bigger advertising costs. The third thing, like Subhash also pointed out, you can have misleading information to solicit work, but having said that, let's be very clear. So advertisements for pecuniary gain, right? Which means that you're not stepping on a colleague's shoes so that you can earn more money, whether it's by undercutting your cost, whether it's by providing extra favors, etc. However, having said that, all your customers have, or from a consumer perspective, your audience does have the right to know and to make informed choices, which means there has to be some way you put out your expertise. In these people, there wasn't as much connectivity required. However, in today's day and age where we are globalized, I mean, no matter what you say, if I'm working out of India, it's not that I'm not working internationally, or the work I do does not have an international impact, right? And that's true for everybody. Now, keeping that in mind, it's extremely important for us to understand that at any point where you are telling people, come give me work because I will do XYZ for you, is essentially where solicitation happens. That does not mean you cannot put yourself out as an expert. Dr. Singh Hatia pointed out something extremely interesting, and I recommend this to all my clients, to students I speak to. There are three key things to establish yourself, whether digitally or offline. One is your expertise, which you need to keep talking about what is it that you know, what is it that you are learning. I do that a lot. I every day I make sure I learn something new and I put it out there so that people know that I'm growing and where is it that I have an expertise in. The second is your network, which means people you are connected to who can refer you to other people, your colleagues, your clients who will refer you to other people. The third is building an audience. Um, Earlier days, like pre-globalization days, you'd have a product, you'll put it out in the market, and then you'd find an audience for it. This is not the day and age for it anymore. What people instead do is they build an audience over a period of time and then find out from that audience what is the pain point, and then provide a product to serve it. It's the same case for lawyers, right? That's something I did when I started my practice in art laws. I had a group of friends who were artists, who were creative professionals, and I would keep hearing from them the challenges they face with clients not making payments on time, or their work not being protected, or their work being used by other people. And that's when I realized that I need to put in a lot more effort in understanding the intricacies of law in the art space, because this I have an audience already existing, and this is an audience I can serve. So being very clear, so that wasn't me soliciting work. That was me just having a network, identifying what their problem is, and using my expertise to service them. That's where you draw the line between solicitation and actually simply putting yourself out there. Um, Having said that, let's be very clear that since we know the spirit of the law is not to provide misleading information simply so that you can get more sales, which is something that actually, paid digital marketing allows you to do. So if you were a lawyer and these BCI regulations weren't there like it's in the US or in many other countries, you would be able to simply have advertisements that go out to people and keep informing them of the work you do. We don't let that happen in India for all the reasons that we've discussed. However, that being said, you have, again, like I feel like entrepreneurs or people providing any kind of service have a moral right to make sure that their audience knows about them, because you are trying to solve that pain point. If your audience does not know, they might have a pain point that wouldn't get solved if you're not putting yourself out there. So I think as entrepreneurs, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a doctor, there are many ways for you to put yourself out there so that you make sure that the right people know that there is a problem that you can solve for them.
Precisely. And it also helps in establishing your credibility in front of clients. And
Absolutely.
yes, ma'am. So what I have got from these three answers is, one can't provide misleading information about their practice, like the achievements or the accolades they don't have, or the results they haven't produced. Secondly, one can't claim someone else's work as their own. Like I make my intern write an article and then I publish it under my name. That is again something which is prohibited. And third, and the obvious one was advertising. You can't just print a billboard of yours and get it placed in UP Merit Road. So these are the three things which
No,
are,
you can do that. You can do that, but don't put your name as an advocate.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can wear the Superman cape. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, you can do that advertising, but you can't advertise yourself as a legal professional. Yeah, but on the other hand, as Aruna ma'am said, what the things which are allowed is you can share about your expertise, what knowledge you have. Second is making a second one was making a meaningful network, which can help you bring more referrals in form of business, which can help you connect to all the prospective clients, and which can help you earn a altogether better name for yourself in the marketplace. And the third and the final was what? Creating a creating a specific audience for yourself, and then understanding their problem. What is the pain point? What are the points in their day-to-day life where they are suffering, and trying to solve that by your services, by your articles, by your YouTube videos, by your tweets, and those sorts of things.
Yes.
Right? All right. So now, which this
I want
brings.
to add one thing here, which
Okay.
is very important for, I think, everybody who's listening here. It is very important to understand there are two kind of products or services in the country. Two kind of products or services are possible. One kind of product and service which have a higher frequency of usage, and second kind of product or service which has a higher velocity of usage. See, legal falls under the second category, where there is a higher velocity, but it's not it doesn't have a frequency of use. You have to understand the difference, and based on this difference, you will appreciate that why we need technology for such a service. If you are living in a specific geographical location, every day there will be many people who may need legal service, but every day a single person may not be legal service. So identifying the right people who need legal service every day is the job of technology, and that is only possible through technology. You personally cannot reach out to the people who need every day a legal service, because one person will not legal service. It is not like a taxi service. Every morning you need a cab to go to office, right? It doesn't have a frequency. As an individual, you may need once in a year, or maybe once in a lifetime, you need a lawyer to help you, right? But there are millions of people every day who want lawyer in their problem. So in a service like legal, and it's the same thing with medical also, medical still have some sort of frequency, but legal service is purely based on velocity. More and more people want it every day, but not same set of people. So it's the right use of technology which will ensure your presence as well as your reach to the right needy people, right? And that's why we are here discussing that how we can leverage this technological revolution to reach out. Let me tell you, and what Subhash at the beginning has said, a very important point. A new lawyer will have an exposure to like 2 or 3 new clients in a month, or maybe in 2 months he'll be able to meet only 1 or 2 clients if he's just physically restricted himself to his chamber in the court, right? On a technology, probably a lawyer will have an exposure to like 100 people in a month or more than that, which is absolutely impossible when he's sitting in a court. So, the increasing the exposure to your, increasing the connect to your people is the core of this whole discussion. I think we are talking more about reaching out to more and more people rather than less number of people, reaching them again and again, right? Yeah.
Understood. Great. So, as sir mentioned, this high frequency of usage and high velocity of usage, the rules have been catered. The rules have been made in the rules by Bar Council of India has made in such a way to cater this proposition of high velocity of usage, so that lawyers just don't go haywire with their marketing tactics and it all gets ugly altogether. All right. So, sir, this brings me to my next question. We have seen that many lawyers start their own YouTube channel and blogs where they explain complex legal procedures and solutions in simple terms. Subhash sir's blog is one of them. The Art Blog of India, I guess its name is.
Art Law India.
Art Law India is that. Amish sir's YouTube channel is quite famous when it comes to criminal law. So these practices really leave a solid impression on clients, hence increase the business from those online channels. But how lawyers can expand this limited reach of their articles or of their YouTube channel to all the prospective clients? I asked this question from the perspective of both, from the perspective of content and from technical aspects. Let's start with Aruna ma'am, because she is quite experienced in this field and she has very good technical knowledge. Aruna
You
ma'am?
asked me to start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. It blurred. Okay, so I think one of the blogs, for example, that I grew up in law school, especially reading, was Gautam Bhatia's constitutional law blog and Manogna Yeluri's blog called Artistic License. And the idea is that we need to stop thinking of ourselves in straitjacket formulas of who we are as lawyers. As lawyers, we aren't just people who go to court and fight a case. We're also legal educators. We're also legal consultants. We're also subject matter experts. So there are various ways in which we can really expand the reach of our work and the expertise we have. And there are multiple ways to do this. So from a content perspective, I'll get to it, but if for all law students here also, it's very important to keep in mind that one, you need to have authenticity about your work. You need to be honest about the kind of effort you're putting in, who's doing it, etc. And you need to have a voice, right? If you're talking what everybody else is talking about, if you're just copy pasting something, you're one person in the clutter and you're not really standing out. So what you need is also a brand voice that stands out from that noise and clutter. What are the various ways in which you can produce this content that establishes your authority or establishes your credibility? Is, say, YouTube videos. Podcasting is a fantastic way of doing it, especially because as of now, the podcast market isn't huge and there's a lot of scope in growing and having a first mover advantage. Your LinkedIn is a fantastic platform because you're able to reach your target audience. In fact, you Google anybody's name, LinkedIn is usually their LinkedIn profile is usually on the first page itself, if they have one, right? So no matter what happens, LinkedIn, I feel, is a must for any professional. Having said all of that, at the same time, I feel like you always should have your website, and the purpose of that website is you get your own real estate on the internet. So you can rent out real estate on a social media platform, but the algorithm will always be dependent on what that social media platform allows you to do. But your website is something you control. You control who comes, you control the kind of content that's put out. And what's extremely important there is that it helps you build an audience, which means you should be getting their emails. I recommend this to everybody. You don't need to have an email marketing software, but make sure you have an audience and you send out an email every month. You could just simply be talking about the kind of work you've done, something interesting you read, but that is one way of staying in touch, of being connected. So that kind of consistency in producing content is important, and I feel you can choose whatever you're comfortable with. for me, I'm not too comfortable producing videos, but podcasting is great for me. Writing is fantastic. I write a lot of articles. I do a lot of live events where I'm speaking to an audience, say something like this. From a technical standpoint, how do you make sure that this audience, your content reaches out to more people? One, you market it through social media. So LinkedIn is a great example. Share the content you put out there. You have an audience, say you have about 50 people in your network, send them an email, ask them to start sharing this. And that's how you build an audience over a long period of time, right? Going a little further, if you have a website, you're writing articles, SEO optimization always helps, which means that if there are keywords that your potential audience is searching on and you start writing about them, Google is going to index them and put them out on the first page. With all of this, what's important to keep in mind is that these are your digital assets, and the more you create, the better it gets in terms of compounding. A lot of people, including me at one time, I was scared of putting myself out there because I would think, oh, what if I'm not good at it? What if somebody else knows better? But the point of that is that in that I realized that the lack of confidence is not because of lack of competence. The more you put out, the better you get. It's like, writing a first draft. Your first draft is going to be shitty if you're a writer. For law students, this is a fantastic time for building your portfolio. One way of getting an internship is writing an email, sending out a resume and a cover letter and hoping it gets selected. The other way, and I did that a lot, is being connected to the people you want to intern with or work with in advance, making sure they see the kind of work you're putting out. Say, you're connected to them on LinkedIn, for example, and you continuously post content of what you're reading, what you're learning about, interesting stuff that you've done, and you continuously share it with them. So your potential employer knows the kind of expertise you have. They know that you are consistent and diligent in your work. They also know you have a growth mentality. So you're not going to be stuck to what you know. You will always be learning about new things. And fourth, and most importantly, they will know that the legal profession is about human interaction. It's about communications at the end of the day. And this is one way of showing that your soft skills are in place, right? So you can learn the law. Anybody can learn the law, but how you present yourself as a lawyer, how you connect with potential clients, with the judge, etc., is also what employers are looking for when they are looking out to hiring people. So having those soft skills in place and being different from the herd, right, is also important. So if there's a law student who's sending me an email for an internship, and there's another who I've been connected with for 6 months and I've seen the interesting stuff they've done, if they ask me to get on a call, I can simply get on a call with them and say, yeah, come, you can join me from next week. Because I already know them. They don't have to sell themselves to me anymore.
All right.
Right?
Right answer, precisely. As Ramanuj sir also tells to me, I have been working with LawSigo for almost 7 months. Aruna ma'am has also been a student of LawSigo.
Yeah,
Ramanuj sir always used to told us that 70% of the jobs don't get marketed. People always tend to hire from their network. So if you have developed this meaningful network, as ma'am put it in her second point, then you don't have to again and again pitch yourself that I am the best candidate. You don't have to again go to that cumbersome process of hiring, and you can simply connect. You can simply exercise that network you have made and get the job done. All right.
Yeah.
So, sir, Gaurav Jain has asked this really valid question. Gaurav Vinod Sharma. Where did that question go? No, sorry. It's MB. His name is MB. The question is, I am holding law firm, so website of an individual or website of a law firm, which one is better? So he's asking that he is just running a law firm, so whether he should open the website of his individual self or he should open a website for his law firm.
I would like to respond here. It's a very good question, and I think it will help everybody to understand that what exactly this means. So if you have a law firm, right, and when we talk about the online presence, I think a website is like Aruna said, it's your real estate on the online space. But let me tell you that just having a website is something which is not enough to be present online. I think your website needs a lot of search engine optimization. Your website needs a lot of maintenance. It should be much more contemporary, and it needs regular updation. So, for a law firm, managing a website means maintaining a small technology team, at least one or two people who are uploading the content and keeping the website contemporary. I have a small suggestion. I mean, now there are systems available which are like which will help you in managing your law firm, not only from the external point of view, but also not only from the external presence, but also from your internal law firm management system. A practice management or a law firm management system allows you both sides. One side is basically when you are present, when your online presence on the internet, and how you would be shown on the world wide web. And second is what all you can do to manage your in-house operations of your law firm. Let's say you have 150 cases, you have 200 documents, and you have 5 team members who are working on that. You need a complete management system to manage the teams. You need a system to manage the documentation, and you need a system to manage all the cases and their dates and their judgments and the new updates that are coming in every case. So it has to be a comprehensive external and internal system, and just having a website is something which will not be solving the purpose.
I think, Anubhav, if I could also add some things,
Yeah,
we have to
please.
understand this in this way. Your website is your home, okay? You don't invite everybody you meet in the outside world home. It's simply to make sure that, you have a place you can go back to that is your space. However, when you want to meet new people, you go out and you socialize. You go to networking events, you go to conferences, etc. That's where you meet people. And social media platforms are those networking events in the virtual world for you. Having said that, your law firm website, for example, will have details on how people can reach out to you. It'll have, from an outreach perspective, it'll have details on the kind of practice areas you have. If you have kind of education, etc., you'll have it there. But also, it will be for people to understand your credibility. So, for example, they want to schedule a meeting with you. You can have an option. You can have, say, a Calendly link where people can schedule meetings with you right then. For and that's the purpose of it. But how you reach out to people is through different social media platforms. But that's not enough, right? You want to collaborate with people. So say, for example, a platform like this webinar is one way for us to reach out to a new audience as well, to talk about what is the work we are doing. And you want to make sure that you continue collaborating there. Outreach is extremely important, because if people don't know you exist in the outside world, they won't know your website either. If you're not doing that kind of outreach, you're not producing content that reaches out to the right audience, nobody is going to know about your website also existing. So having a website is not enough. It is one way. It's laying a foundation for you to step out. At the end of the day, as a human being, you want to come back home so that you have a bed to sleep in, so that you can refresh and start working again. Whether you have an office or not, you still need a room to sleep in. Your website acts as that for you. And I always recommend people to have an email list. If you have a website also, for example, there's always an opportunity for you to capture emails. And the reason why I always recommend emails is because no matter where a person goes to across the world, their email usually does not change, and it has historically had the highest rate of conversions as well, because that's an audience that wants to keep learning more about you. They want to be connected with you, which is why they've given you your email. So even if you're a student, for example, and you have a website or a LinkedIn, for example, building that kind of network or audience is extremely important.
Precise, ma'am. So, Bhaskar, would you like to add something?
Yes. Well, when we see, it's a choice that we have to make whether we want to pitch as an individual or as a law firm. But what is the limitation imposed on us as lawyers by the Advocates Act that we need to understand? It is that we can only provide information, the basic information which can connect you to others. So even if you have a law firm and if you are only providing your information, which is your name, your email ID, your phone number, your specialization, your practice area, that you can provide on your law firm's website, which will have everyone else's profile as well. and of course then you will be paying commonly for that website maintenance. But if you have an individual website, then you will be spending a lot more, and it's easier said than done. Now I think MB again asked a follow-up question on having a LinkedIn profile, whether it is similar to having a website or not. I think uh, it is in a way that you are LinkedIn becomes your agent. It gives you an opportunity. It helps you do your SEO, which you cannot otherwise do on your own. And even with the best of the resources that you might put in to operate a website, you will not be able to be the first hit on Google search. Like how Aruna had put it across, that you search for any name and LinkedIn would probably be the first link. So having a LinkedIn profile is better than having an individual website any day, and it's for free. So you don't spend much other than your internet cost.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
Yeah, I think I want to point out something here. When we recommend people to start off, building their personal brand, we don't, or the first step is not to get your website, because that is, of course, an additional cost. However, that should be the goal. The reason for that is LinkedIn, at the end of the day, from an algorithmic perspective, is a platform, and that platform's policies can change in terms of who are the people you can get connected to, how can you reach out to people, what is the kind of content you can put out, whether the content you've put out is secure or not. LinkedIn can shut down at any point, as has happened with platforms like Awkward or High Five or all of these that used to exist at one point of time. And so the reason for having your personal website is so that you have control over your audience, so that you have control over how things go out. It's like a security net that you have. With that being said, having your presence on platforms is essential, because that's where people frequent the most. When you, even like if you have, say, any kind of business that you're running or any kind of profession that you're in, the first step at providing the service is finding out where your audience is frequenting most often. What is it that they do during the day? So you want your idea to be validated, which means you want to be where your audience is. And if your audience is on LinkedIn, it would have been foolhardy for a lawyer not to be there, because that's where all your audience is. That's how you're getting connected to people who want your services anyway.
And
Understood.
apart from this, I think I would like to add one more point, and we have to understand. I think we missed one very important stakeholder in this discussion of websites. Your client. What exactly your client is looking at from you as you are their lawyer and you are taking care of their matter. What exactly a client is expecting from you? There was a recent research which came 2 days back, which says that clients are now, preferring those lawyers. Also, as a lawyer, we have to understand that what your client is expecting from you. Right? There was an international study which came just 2 days back only, which says that now, at least at international level, clients are now preferring those lawyers who can update them online, right? Who can talk to them online, who are present online, and who can be available on demand as and when a client needs them. Because physical meeting is something which now at this point of time looks really challenging. And then again, in last 3 months, the world has changed. Now going and driving the car and going for a meeting looks like you are doing something out of the world. When it has become so easy to talk to someone online. So when we say the online presence of a lawyer, I think it is very important. It's a complete package. It's one, like I said, it should be a complete practice management for you. Then it could be your micro website which is available and where you can connect and update your clients, existing clients, and also you are now present there for the potential clients also who are looking at the skills that you may have, the expertise that you have, the kind of current existing clients that whom you are serving, and the kind of work that you did in the past, right? So it has to be like a 360-degree approach. You should not only just be available online, but you also be able to manage all the expectations of a client in terms of updating them on time. What if you as a lawyer create a mobile application for yourself in your name? Let's say Subhash Putoria's mobile application. So now Subhash can give his mobile application to all his clients and say, sir, as and when there is an update in your matter, you will be updated. Now that is a delight for a client, right? What exactly a client wants? Client want that he needs to be updated as and when there is some upgrade or downgrade happened in his matter. So apart from the website, the value addition that Subhash may do is he can have a technology piece in his name. Then probably he can have a emailer list of his existing clients whom he can start sending the past work that he did in terms of IT. He can also send his existing clients the latest happenings in the IP world, like what is new in the sports law. There may be many people who may like to know that what is happening on this front. So the in nutshell, I would like to say that it should be a 360-degree approach, not just the website, but you should also
Yeah.
keep the client in your mind.
So
Yeah.
I'll give a classic example of what recently happened after this whole COVID happened, and most of my fashion labels which I work with, they all were facing difficulty with the rent issues and all. So they all have these groups of all the fashion designers, and I had randomly just told my client that we can help you on a probably just as pro bono or whatever, because obviously we are part of the fraternity and this, and it just circulated. So with technology, I realized that the word of mouth did not reach to just one at that moment. It reached to thousands.
Yeah.
This is something which we need to understand, that where we are heading is that it's a boon as well as a bane. That technology is something which is giving you an exposure to, I don't know, billions. At the same time, that's why you have to be in control of your thoughts, your content, and your technology. So when Dr. Singatia tells us about having your own app, having your own probably branded app or presence in terms of your promptness, because you have a technology that you have adapted to, this becomes word of mouth for you from your client.
Yeah.
Because your client says that, look, I have a lawyer who uses a technology, and as soon as the matter gets over, I get an update. Where are you? Did you manage to talk to your client? Because I work with so many off councils across India, and it is a pain. It is so much pain because these people, unfortunately, people are not tech savvy. They don't pick up the phones. They don't respond to messages. It becomes so difficult being a lawyer. When we talk about duty to colleague, there's no duty of those off councils to respond, to update. It becomes so difficult. So if you have a technology, if you are on technology, all you need is to update, just send an SMS, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And that's what the technology is doing to us now. As legal profession, we are becoming much more competitive, and we are much more exposed and visible and available and approachable to everyone.
I think even like from a publicity perspective, technology has made things so much easier for a lot of people, because say, sponsoring moot courts or essay competitions or all these national conferences was possible for big law firms because they had the money to invest in that kind of rental infrastructure for these events. But for these events that have now shifted online completely, the cost in terms of infrastructure required has reduced drastically, which means smaller firms can also start, building a brand like that for them. So if say Crida Legal wants to host a moot court competition focusing on the creative economies, they can choose to do that at far lesser cost, and that is one way for Crida to reach out to a wider audience. And this is how people reach out. So your pro bono work, although it is, even if you advertise the fact that you do pro bono work, provided that it's not for pecuniary interest, that within the mandate of the Advocates Act is allowed, because what you are advertising is not for pecuniary gain. It is for social service. It is for public policies of the country, which means that is why organizations or law firms advertise the fact that they do free legal aid or they provide those kinds of services, because the line of demarcation between pure profits and social good becomes diluted in those cases. So if as a lawyer you're at any time confused about what is it that becomes solicitation or not, if you can justify that what you're doing is not only for pecuniary gains, but there is a social aspect to it, there is a CSR aspect to it, then within the ambit of the Advocates Act, and given all the various judgments we've also had in the country and internationally, that is allowed, because the indication of pure pecuniary benefit is not being satisfied there.
Precisely. Uh, One more thing is ki we know the lawyers who take the money and don't even show up. But when the same lawyer is online, it gives a certain sense of assurity to client if that lawyer tries to screw me over, I'm going to post something bad about him online and I can have my remedy. Those sorts of things. So they client always have the option to resort to those kind of options. So that is something which tends to hire a lawyer who is present online, right, sir?
Yeah, because see, the idea is that you want somebody, when you're going to spend money, you want someone who has credibility, who other people have reviewed, that other
Yeah.
people have reviewed good for, so there's social proof. You don't think you're the only stupid person hiring that person. There are other people who've given testimonials. Their person has experience, and also this is a person, or this is a business that you can reach out to. They are approachable. They You can find them existing, right? And that becomes essential when you're giving a surety, or you're trying to convince a new, especially a new user or a new client of yours, that you are credible, you are people can trust you, you have authority over what you're talking about, and you're authentic in that sense.
Precisely. As ma'am mentioned, the reviews play a great part, and the rating and those sorts of things. There actually, I remember there was a app, but some lawyers by way of PIL got it removed, saying who are these people who can review us? We know what our worth is and those sort of things. So yeah, ma'am, you mentioned about conversion rate. We all are aware of the fact that visitors to client ratio of the online platforms is at max 5 to 7%. Most clients just have this tendency to inquire from one lawyer but hire another lawyer who is who they know or might be their relative. But the problem is most lawyers stop putting efforts with the same quantum once they visit once the visitors count go up, right? So
Hmm.
can we tackle this problem of low conversion rate, and how can we leverage the connections or followers we build on online platforms, or the followers or blogs or websites? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think like there are two aspects to this. One, I'll first step back from just the legal profession and talk from a business perspective. If you have 20 leads as a business owner, 20 people are coming and inquiring about your product, and they're good leads, they fit your audience, and you're not able to convert them, then there is something wrong with your sales process. Then there is something wrong with the fact that you are not able, somebody who has a problem that you can solve and they are coming out to you, they are not yet convinced that you are the right choice for them. End of the day, that is what's happening when you have low conversion rate from leads that are coming in. From a digital perspective, increasing your conversion rates is one about consistency, that you consistently put out quality content. But from a UX perspective, you also want to make sure that it's easy for people to make that decision. So if you have a website that has a lot of unnecessary details, that does not service your ideal client at all, and they have to find contact information, or they have to really struggle to find a way to contact you, then they will be less inclined to reach out to you in the first place, because you're frustrating them at that time from a UX perspective. And you want to make sure that it's absolutely easy for people to find you, which means that if somebody Googles you, you ensure that you have a Google address mentioned, so that people can reach out to you directly. If you have a LinkedIn, make sure that you put in your email address, or a strategy form, or like a link where people can block time in your calendar easily. These are, you have to think about it from a perspective that somebody is online, they're looking for a solution to their problem. How can you give them the most convenience in terms of solving that problem for you? How can they reach out to you easiest, right? And if you're not able to close those leads, that becomes a sales issue, where you're maybe either you're not the right fit, or you're not able to convince the client that you are the right choice for them. So that's less about conversion and more about how you are in terms of your sales
Setting.
strategy.
All right. Now asking Irvin, sir, so what is your take on it? You run a legal website which allow people to hire experts online, legal experts or financial experts. But how do you guys tackle this problem of low conversion rates or low visitors to a client's rate?
See, it is important to understand that how this conversion. I mean, you have used 5 to 7% conversion. I think I feel that the conversion is not more than 2.5 to 3%. That is the actual conversion when it comes to legal. Uh, there are various reasons for this. You know, in India currently, the legal literacy is not really high. Am I audible to all?
Yeah, sir, you are
Yeah.
audible very clearly.
So legal literacy is something which is a very big challenge. You know, individuals who have some problem, they are not very sure whether it's legal in nature or not. That is the first point of problem. You know, the legal need identification is not there in India, uh, for the simple reason that there is no legal education in our academics anywhere. Right? We study about social sciences, we about some biology in our school. We understand something about medical, but we don't understand legal at all. Right? So the problem is the precursor for a legal need is not very clear. So a client who is looking on a website to hire a lawyer first understand that he himself or she herself don't know whether they actually need a lawyer or not, whether their problem requires hiring a lawyer or not, and compare it with a situation where if you have a headache or a abdomen ache, you know that at least you need a doctor for that because now it is beyond your bearable pain limit, so you need some medication, you need some support from a doctor. But in a legal scenario, most of the times it is not that urgent that you need something right now. Right? You are going through a partition, in a family partition, you are going through a family dispute, you are going through some fraud situation, you are going through some consumer complaint situation. Now you don't know, do you really need to hire a lawyer? Do you really need some legal support at all, if there is any? Or at the topmost, which my experience is, people even don't know that whether there is any kind of support available for them, right? The whole thought of going to a lawyer is a scary thought for individuals. They think that अगर मैं lawyer के पास गया मतलब मेरा मतलब I am gone, right? So
I
it's
will be
best.
overcharged in those.
हाँ, there is no transparency, there is no MRP, there is no productization of the service. I mean, there is no products available. आप जाएंगे, आपकी शक्ल देख के, आपकी appearance देख के, आपकी capability देख के rate decide होगा, which is a matter of, which is a fact, right? So rather than, why don't we get into a process of standardizing the things, right?
Yeah.
Where we can have standard rates, where we have standard product, where we can package the service, where we can make things much more transparent. In that scenario, the conversion from 2% to grow to 7% or 10% or maybe more. So it is not about the technology of website, but it is about the awareness and the
Yeah.
intellectual capability of the audience here, right?
I think I'd like to add a couple of points here. For starters, we're in a country where internet accessibility is extremely low. It's not like other countries, right? So we have about 38 to 40% accessibility, which means from the 100% population we have in India, as a lawyer, you can simply only target 38% of the population, first thing. Second, like Dr. Arvind pointed out, one, people don't know if there is legal support or not. Two, they also might not know what the right way of accessing that support is or asking for it. So they might not know the right terminology to search for, which means as a lawyer, you also have to put yourself in the shoes of a person. Assume, like I would always recommend this, assume that your client, whosoever your ideal client is, does not know about what kind of service you provide. This is not about your service. This is about the problem they are facing. If you were in that position, what is it that you would be looking for? So as a lawyer, for example, I mean, like as an artist, for example, who's not getting paid, and I don't know that, there's legal provisions available that can support me, I will simply look at company did not pay on time. So that could also be a CA's, like, that could also be a question that they might be asking a CA, for example. So getting clear and getting outside of our own legal jargon is extremely important. Start thinking about how would a layman ask a question that they need help with, and then fit in your legal expertise there, find them there. That's extremely important because one, you digitally, as of now, you have lesser population to service. Second, these people might not know the terminology that you are writing in or you are posting about, so they might not even be able to find you in the first place. You have to be findable, which means you have to start thinking from the perspective of your audience or who your ideal client is. What are their problems? And if they have a certain problem, where are they most likely going to visit to find out? So if say you're an artist and you don't know there are legal problems, maybe your Behance would is one place where you could find more artists who are facing similar problems, because that's where artists are congregating. So being very clear about these things is extremely important to get better conversions.
All right, understood. I remember Subhash sir in our first webinar, how to make career in art and fashion law. Subhash sir told me the biggest strength of a lawyer is to think from others' perspective, and that is what exactly Aruna Chawla ma'am has highlighted here. That you have to start thinking from your audience perspective. How would they approach you? What are the kind of questions they will ask you? Uh, what are the places where they might need your help, where they might want you to hold their hands and walk through it, and where they can figure out it on their own? Where do you have to create that line of demarcation ki now you are being hyper technical and now you are being naive? So you have to think from your client's perspective. That great insight, ma'am.
I
uh,
just want to add something here, Anubhav.
yes sir.
While we are talking about a very low conversion rate, but this I see it, at least at this time, I see it as an opportunity, because something which we could not do or could not think of doing, COVID has made us done. In past 3 months, we all have understood how to operate our phones. We have started using laptops and taking selfies when we are doing video conferencing hearings. Uh, it is the time when everyone should understand that this is a normal life, and this is going to continue as a normal life for the longest time. So if we are using a smartphone, we have apps like Legal Card. We across all those 15 lakh lawyers, they can just download it and use it. That solves a lot of problems. This is something which will not just help you in promotion or marketing or advertising, or like, even if you're not doing it, it will also help you become a better professional, which is very important today. What we are looking at is just not from the client's perspective, whether client understand the query, what he has issue or not, but also whether you as a professional are serving him that quality which you assure of. So I think, at least I am finding COVID times and this lockdown as a very, very good opportunity for all of us to get on board and start using these technologies. And these are very, very simple technologies, very efficient and simple technologies.
Precisely, sir. Totally understand. So now we have talked about why it is important to go online, how to increase the limited reach of YouTube channels and articles, how one can leverage the connections and increase the conversion. Now, so we know that most of the people are not on LinkedIn. As Aruna ma'am has rightly pointed out, ki there is somewhere around 38% India's population which has access to internet, and we can only imagine what is the percentage of people that are available on LinkedIn. So the place where clients first search a lawyer is Google. So not everyone goes to LinkedIn on the or the websites dedicated to hiring legal professionals like Legal Card. So if one can create a good presence for himself on Google, it can really catapult their practice to a whole new level. So starting with Arvind sir, how can lawyers build a solid presence on Google according to you? You are expert in legal technology. You have run one of the most uh, what should I say, best website to reach out to legal professionals. And so what is your take on it?
See, I think when it comes to your presence on Google, and you very rightly said that Google search engine is the first place where an individual start its search, right? And it is very simple. I mean, we don't need any assumptions. If we go into Google keyword search and we really go and see that what are the keywords that have been searched by people in last 1 month, in last 6 months, in last 10 days, it is very easy for you to understand that how the Google search works. And to crack that, to crack your presence on Google, I think you have to understand that how people search, what are they looking for, And do you really fall into their search criteria or not? Right? Uh, when I say this, it's not that straightforward because Google is a huge competitive place. There are a lot of there are a lot of millions of people competing for their keywords, and they wanted to be placed in the first 10 searches or on the very first page, etc. But I think by using this search engine optimization, by using right keyword search, using some promotion on Google, and there are many other things which I think Aruna is the best to tell because she is the search engine optimization and online presence expert. We are legal technology expert. I have created technology for lawyers. I have created technology for law firms. But for yes, presence on online platforms, I am taking expert from people like Aruna who are helping me to make sure that we stay relevant on Google and other search engines.
All right. So, Arman, would you like to add something to the answer? Or I
Yeah.
can suggest us some tools we can use to enhance our presence on Google.
Absolutely. So, you have to understand that end of the day, Google is an aggregator of all the different kinds of content that gets produced on the internet, right? Google is not producing its own content. Now, imagine you have a bucket of 100 balls and you need to pick out any five of them. If you have just one, like if your contribution to that bucket is just going to be one ball, then you have 1 in 100 chances to be picked up. But if your contribution is 10, then you have 1 in every 10 balls to be picked up. It's as simple as that, right? So to get a higher ranking on Google, SEO is like the technical aspect which says that the X is the kind of keywords that people are searching for, and when you produce content that caters to that search, people find you, and then it's easier for them to find you. How do you do that? You do that by creating digital assets, and you do that by creating multiple digital assets. So say from a PR perspective, if there is content being created in newspapers, in magazines, on different platforms, and every month you have something that goes out that builds your database of the content that you've created, and Google starts ranking that. So your website is one digital asset that you create. Having your LinkedIn, again, I always recommend LinkedIn because it's the first thing that comes up. Even if you search on Google, LinkedIn is going to be coming up. So having like a basic LinkedIn is important. You can choose to, if you don't want to have your own platform, say you don't want your own podcast, you don't want your blog, you don't want your YouTube channel, none of that. What you can start doing is having a lot of collaborations or writing a lot for different platforms. So there can be somebody who wants to continuously write for Law Seco and say different platforms, and every month they have something that goes out. Google starts recognizing that name as coming up regularly, and then they start classifying it, which means that so if somebody ends up googling your name, the first 2 pages, 3 pages become all yours rather than somebody else's. If they google something that's related to what you're talking about, your work starts coming up as well. So I think these are things that are important.
So Subhash sir, according to you,
Yes.
what can be the tools? Like, how can I know what are the keywords people are searching, or how can I do out this search engine
Well,
optimization?
you have two ways to go about it. One is that you create your own unique hashtags. So I know a couple of lawyers who are extremely well versed with technology, and they use it to their benefit to such an extent that it's unbelievable. So they have created unique hashtags, and they always, whenever they are posting anything, say for example, if I'm posting anything, I'll always hashtag art lawyer, or always hashtag if something is is an information, I'm writing this book because there is a law, so I'll always hashtag that. So that that helps you in getting a very good search hit, because it's easy whenever people are searching for you, so they will search for hashtag, or those hashtags get copied or traced by Google. So you need to understand how Google AdWords or Google keyword services work. It's a analysis of what are the things which are closely related to you, and they keep popping up. So there was an instance, while my name is a bit unique otherwise, but yes, there were other Subhash Bhutodia also, and couple of years back, probably there were, if I had to search for Subhash Bhutodia, there were
Surgeon or
probably
not.
2-3 other Subhash Bhutodia. So I had to really worked hard on making sure that I have enough content on the internet that whenever somebody searches for a Subhash Bhutodia, it is always my profile, my presence, which comes on the first page. And first page matters. Nobody scrolls down and go to the 1 to thousands of pages on Google, which goes on to Google. So nobody does that. So you have to have your presence on the first page of Google search result. And
I'm
for
little
that,
lucky from that perspective. When I type my name in Google, till 4 pages there is no other Arvind Singhati apart from me.
see, so that's what exactly you have to do. You have to ensure that that is what trademark lawyers do, right? Stop confusion, public confusion. So there cannot be another Subhash Bhutodia. So you have to work for it. So now is the difficulty. So what amounts to an information? What amounts to promotion? So your presence on the net should not be uh, like it should not be like a hoarding. Your presence on the net should be like your footprint which you have left while you met Anubhav, while you met Arvind, while you met Aruna. It should be that when I went to your house, I clicked a selfie with Anubhav. So that's about it. So that shows connect. That does not show promotion, right? So this is the difference that you need to understand. When you are even on the internet, your presence should be of personal connect. If you're traveling, if you are clicking pictures, if you are posting a blog, it should have a personal connect. It cannot be a promotion. And that's how you build your online presence as a lawyer.
Great answer. So in the meantime, we are also running short on time. So I only have two more questions left. Uh, we know that there are many lawyers who are already doing well in the online brand building game. There are professionals like Aruna Chawla ma'am who are helping many digital entrepreneurs set up their virtual brands. And thus even the world of online branding is getting really competitive. So in between all this crowd and hundreds of service providers but very limited genuine clients, how can one distinguish himself from the peers? Starting with Aruna ma'am only, because I know that she told me that she might have to leave early, so I'm starting with her. Ma'am, are you there? What she said? Tech problems, guy. Okay, all right. So, Arvind sir.
Yeah, Anubhav.
Yes, sir.
So you asked.
Yeah.
Can you just say last line once again? What you said?
How one can distinguish himself from his peers on online?
All right. I think you
Sir.
being a good practitioner and having a good track record is self sufficient for you to distinguish yourself from the peer group. But yes, like I said, end of the day, we all are into a profession, and this profession is a bread and butter for all of us. So and when there is a profession, there is always a client, right? So I think your client satisfaction level and your client's response to your services is something which will actually make you distinguished from your peer. If you are prompt, if you are professional, if you are updating them on time, if you are giving them good results, if you are courteous to them. And let me tell you again, let me correct myself. Result is something which is not in your hand when it comes to a legal profession or a medical profession, so you can't assure any kind of result. But yes, apart from that, all kind of courtesy, all kind of importance, all kind of updates, if you can give them, I think you will always be considered as a lawyer who is more prompt, who is more understanding, who is pro client, right? And that's what is going to make you different from your peers.
You have justice, equity, and good conscience as parameters.
Absolutely.
You have to serve either justice or equity or conscience. Have to work in your favor.
All right. So, Subhash sir, can you explain a bit more on this? How one can distinguish himself?
Well, it is important to stick to what you are good at. It's not just you. You will not have good or best day every day. You will face situations both from the courts as well as from the clients. You will not be favorite of your client every day, and you will always have others to also pull you down. You have to keep in mind all these. You have to be mindful of all these circumstances, but you have to be persistent. You have to be consistent in terms of what you're putting online. You have to ensure that people recognize you not just as a lawyer, but also as an expert consultant, not just as a lawyer, but also as a friend who can be approached. And that is where I find that, and also you need to set your own rules. You cannot be approached at 2 o'clock in the night, maybe. But if it's urgent, you are available. So this is something where I find that technology plays a vital role in your professional life, and that's how you create your presence fair. You don't just be there and start adding your name on each and every uh, social media or something, but you need to create. It's like, why will I talk about Mr. Salve, or why would I talk about Mr. Rohtagi, or why would I talk about Dr. Singhvi? Because I know that they are someone who are very good at something, not everything maybe, and that's what you have to do, and it's not difficult. And I can tell you from my experience in of running a firm for past almost 3.5 years now, that there's no dearth of work, but there's dearth of good professionals. There's a major dearth of good professionals. There's like I have noticed being a lawyer, practicing for 11 years, I have noticed that there are hardly good lawyers around. So I can tell you that good. When I say good lawyers, I mean lawyers who are professionals. They will not update the client. So these are the things which makes your presence felt, uh, even through the virtual space.
So the crux of the answer was, instead of spreading your practice to thousand other areas, just be specialized in
Yes.
2 or 3 is good enough
Yes.
to get you good presence on Google, get you good clients, get you good money.
Yes.
And even Aruna ma'am has
It's like,
written her.
I'll just add here, Anubhav, it's because you mentioned that there are lawyers who would say that I am good at corporate law. So I've seen on LinkedIn, they'll say expert areas, corporate law, IP law, tax law, every law. And I wonder, like, it took me 5 years of law school and 11 years of practice just to understand probably one single law. And still now I'm not good at it. I still have to go back to CPC and look at the provisions and understand. So it's something that you need to understand. If you are having an online presence, don't show as if you are good at everything, because if you screw at one thing, your client will leave you for everything else. That's very important.
Precisely, sir. Even I still remember sir telling me these words: "Ki the secret of earning more money as a lawyer is to make yourself specialized in one thing, expert, mastering one niche. The more niche that thing is, the lesser number of people are there who can provide that service,
Yes,
and
that's
thus
also one
more
thing.
people will
Yes.
resort to you." All right.
No, it's another thing like tax. Tax is a very established practice. There are a lot of lawyers in tax. But yes, if you are a tax expert, people will come to you for all the tax works. So you should pose and you should promote yourself as an expert in that area.
All right. So Aruna ma'am has also, due to some technical glitch, Aruna ma'am has written her opinion in the chat box, which is, have an opinion. What is unique thing you bring to the table? So everyone can go and read about the law in the Bare Act. So everyone can do Google and figure out what are the provisions. But what is your approach towards the solution? How you are planning to avail the remedies what client want is what makes you unique, right? Second one is be authentic and be human. People want to know that there is a real person behind the screen. Like when we
Very
chat to
important.
someone on Zomato, they, though they are human, but they still give very black and white replies like yes, no, or on their way. These sorts of reply. And be consistent. As they say, ki consistency sits on the threshold of success. Be seen regularly, network as a priority. You are rewarded for something which you do slowly, not occasionally. So these are some great insights, by Arun. All right. So with this, I am done with my set of questions. Now I am enabling attendees to ask the question. If now anyone has any unanswered query, you guys can directly come live and ask the experts. Aarti has asked, will this webinar be available on YouTube? Yes, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel named Lawsico. You can watch it there again. Anyone has any question, you guys can unmute yourself and ask. Yeah, Ria has asked this question. Can you explain the strategy advocacy on human rights? It's very specific question. I don't think it's relevant to the session. Let me jump to another one. Can a practicing advocate run an educational YouTube channel alongside? Is there any bar? Subhash, sir, would you like to take this?
Yes. Can I just go to the chat? What is the question again?
Question was, can a
YouTube.
practicing advocate run a educational YouTube channel alongside?
So it depends. Like again, the couple of things here. One is that being an advocate, if you are registered with the bar and you surrender everything else that you can do in terms of your professional commitments. So if you are running an education channel with the intention of profit, probably you will have to surrender your bar registration. So, but yes, if you are operating as an NGO providing legal aid and legal awareness, that is something which probably does not come within the purview of sanctions as per the Bar Advocates Act and the Bar Council rules. So having a presence, because it's a medium, what we are talking about. When MBC's YouTube channel pays you for, yes, on certain views, you have to be one of those influencers. And if you are an influencer and you're getting paid for the promotions, then probably you'll have to say, I'm sure that YouTube has this this filter or probably parameter when you are when you're operating a channel on YouTube, that are you a business channel or is it just a information channel? Because YouTube understands law better than anyone of us. Google understands laws better than anyone of us. And if you have seen their terms of use and terms, privacy policies and other thing, you'll understand that they have all sort of warranties and representations and all sort of indemnities, which says that you will not do anything which is prohibited, which is prohibitory. And if what I understand in literal sense, in pure sense, that if you're doing anything which is a profitable activity other than while being a lawyer, while being an advocate, that would be contravention, that would be that will fall under the restrictions of the Advocates Act.
So another very good question that has been asked by Mayur Shanbag is, what's wrong with allowing advertising allowed in so many countries?
Well,
Why Indian lawyers are not allowed to advertise?
I've traveled across several states in America and in the States, and it's very funny when you are traveling on those on the expressways and you see those hoardings. You should see those ads. Oh, there are some really hilarious ads. It's about keeping the profession noble. It is, advertisement is not to stop probably you from making yourself visible, but it's a duty which is casted upon you for the welfare and for the welfare of the fraternity per se, and in a larger public interest. So you need to understand that the contravention or the restriction on advertisement, promotion or marketing is because we treat legal profession as not for profit, but as a service, as a public service that we understand. Advertisement or marketing will lead to issues like misrepresentation, cheating, deceiving. People can start,
unhealthy competition,
unfair competition. People can start disparaging you, like you have BMW and Mercedes ads. So if you look at the other perspectives, advertisements can be really can be draconian. So I think it's a fair idea not to have that kind of competition in promotion marketing.
Arvind, sir, what is your take on it? I remember you mentioned it in the very beginning of the session that it is to keep the professional noble. Like if there are four advocates start when you, if someone is in jail and you want to get him bailed, and there are four advocates standing right in front of you with various discount coupons, with various rebate schemes and long-term service promise, it is really inhuman and it only adds to your problems. So what else is your solution to it?
So, like Subhash and you both have very rightly mentioned that it's not just about business. Right? Legal is related to the problem of a person. Right? Nobody likes to get into a legal battle or in a legal discussion until unless there is a problem in their life. It's if it's as usual, everybody would like to eat cake and have cold drinks and want to enjoy their life. Right. So I think legal advertisement. I think you guys have discussed everything that it may spark many unfair things also in the market. But honestly, the fraternity is the intellectual fraternity. Like they are not like any other business, non-normal business. Lawyers and doctors are the most educated individuals, highly professional in their in their education. Advertisements, and I'm saying from a layman's perspective, right? It's not there is no this is not a technical explanation. Advertisement is to sell something which is like which needs to be sold in the market with a proper competition. You have to show someone down, you have to show someone at a lower light, then only you can show yourself at a higher light. On the other hand, in medical and in legal, I think the fraternity is so intellectual that they can compete with their performance, with their intellectual capacity, with their understanding, and the way they can do their code craft in the code as well as outside the code. They don't need any advertisement per se. What they need is a way, a method through which they can or their work can reach out to maximum individuals. That's it.
All right. So I have Athar has asked. Please don't mind my pronunciation. I have Athar has asked. Can we expect a future in India where such restrictions are done away, or can or so as to be able to open to market mm, to a fair market the other developed nations? Wouldn't scope for legal marketing come with better competitive markets?
No, I think it's a very considered opinion decision, and for the longest time it has existed. Uh, we may we may be eager to see ourselves on the hoardings. We may be eager uh, to be more visible, but that is the whole point. That we do not have to run into the into the borders of what is restricted, and we can continue to be visible. And that's the whole point. Like what we are making it here is that having an online presence is not marketing or promotion per se. So if you want to let people know that you exist, if you want to let people know that is what is your expertise, this is something which even the Bar Council rules provide you. The website rule says that you can put your practice areas. It says that you can put your information. It rather encourages you to make connections, and that's what you have to do. You don't have to you don't have to package yourself like a Bonville chocolate and get on the hoarding and just to be visible. You don't have to do that, right? Uh, for the longest time, I didn't know how Jethmalani looked like, but I've heard his name for the first thing. Yeah, he was a stalwart, and that's what. So, in legal fraternity, as very rightly said by Dr. Singatia, is that it's a fraternity of intelligent, intellectual people. They don't require advertisement marketing. All they require is to put their acumen across. That's about it.
Precisely. And the growth of your practice should not depend on how much you can spend on your advertising, on this
Yeah.
marketing activities. So that is also another point. So Arunabam, what is your take on it? Should this?
So, yeah.
So you know the question.
Yeah, I think what's extremely interesting when we work with startups as well, before a startup wants to get funding or get investment, what as consultants we would always recommend is that the first 1,000 customers, the first 1,000 paying customers that you have should come from organic growth. These are people who find you, who you convince one-on-one on that basis. So the question of scaling up through paid advertisements comes much later. The first step is to get these customers, right? And this is the same thing for legal professionals as well. You don't have to have paid advertisements to scale up. That does not mean you can't find your customers already. And this is something we recommend to any startup, anybody building a personal brand, that first focus on building an organic network, on organic growth. And then if you feel the need to scale up, to reach out to a wider audience, which means to reach out to an audience in millions and billions, that is when you need paid advertisements. But if it's somebody like me, right, like I have a very boutique service that I provide only I provide my services only to businesses or consultants or experts who want to build organic growth or organic PR, which means not paid advertisements, which means not paid PR at all. So that is my expertise, and that's what in fact lawyers really should be start aligning with, that you find your audiences on a one-on-one basis. How can you leverage technology, for example, to find that audience, right? In that scope, you don't even need advertisements, because you would already reach that quantum of work if you are putting out that kind of efforts or that kind of publicity strategy consistently.
I just like to add here, Anubhav, like, we are seeing that a lot of firms these days, uh, well, they in a way they are doing marketing by paying for awards. There's so many awards. Like almost every day on my LinkedIn, every other person is a super lawyer. He is the best lawyer in the whole wide world, and probably UNESCO has recognized that lawyer as a best IP lawyer. So so it's in a way that people are doing that sort of legal marketing. But what Aruna said, that you need to first of all build your organic presence, your clientele through your organic leads. Then when you have enough resources and you want to invest those resources, there are other ways how people are doing their marketing. It's in gray areas, nobody has questioned. You go to IIM, you go to WTR, you go to Mondac, you'll have every other day you'll see a list of who's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, who decides that, and how it happens, nobody knows about it. But yes, so you need to first of all build yourself to that level, and then you can probably take care of those kind of activities.
Totally understand, sir. All right. So I see that there are some questions which Subhash sir has already answered, so I can't take them up again. But he's totally he has put a very lengthy concept, a thing which can be a complete different session altogether in a very precise manner in single line. All right, sir. So I have this one question. You mentioned about big law firms. So we know that lawyers are not allowed to have websites, but law firms do have a website, and even Creda Legal has a website. So how does this work?
No. Lawyers are allowed to have websites. What the rule says that you can only have an informational website. You cannot make it like a fancy website. You can only like your information board. You can. It's just like your visiting card, right? You just have to have your name, your details, how you can be contacted. That's about it. You cannot have a very very detailed, elaborate, fancy website like how government websites are with all those blingies.
Acha, acha. So what is that disclaimer which comes every time when I open any
Yes.
top law
So
firm's website?
that is just like your deposition. That's just like your affidavit, which says that whatever is there, it's a truthful information. It's and everything that you believe is true and correct. And it is only for informational purpose. It is not for solicitation. All those things. So वही है दिल बहलाने की बात है. So that's why you have that disclaimer. Otherwise, how many people even read those disclaimer? They just say accept, right?
There is something like this is written, yes, I am demanding this.
But that is
why
mandatory. But that is mandatory by bar council principles. You have to have that disclaimer.
that disclaimer is something which allows the lawyers to have the website. That the client
Yes.
has demanded the information. That's why I'm providing. I'm no way soliciting.
Yes. Yes. You cannot solicit.
Another question I got from this one is, and this will be the last one. We know that there is always a first mover advantage. Subhash sir told me that now he has this advantage of being incumbent in the online space, and now he is getting more traffic over there. So, according to uh, you, sir, what are the platforms that are still untapped but have a great potential, like LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is definitely the one. Uh, YouTube is there.
Yeah,
Your
platforms that are untapped.
Well, when we say untapped, uh, probably they are untapped because they don't have good SEOs. They do not have that kind of presence, and you don't want to be in a locked room. Why would you want to be? When you're preparing for something, why would you want to go for an audience of 5 people when you can go for a 50,000 people audience? So right. So the idea of having a presence on that website is also because you want to be visible to the largest extent possible. And I would always say that you can have accounts on those untapped uh, portals, but most of the social media I know are known. Now you have WhatsApp Business, which is a very great tool. Like people recognize it as a business account. You can put your content there as well. YouTube is a great resource. It's a very good content building resource, and it is permanent. Zoom calls, Zoom discussions are not. So somebody asked whether it will be available on YouTube or not. So you can see the permanency because it is also fixing your content there, right? Then you have Instagram. So microblogging is very important. Twitter is a very good resource, a very good tool, but you have to use it in a very conscious and wise way because there's a lot of roasting, a lot of badgering happens on Twitter. So you have to avoid these things in any of the platform, anyways. You should not be judgmental when you're writing something. You should not be very decisive of. You should not be very opinionated because you never know what kind of clientele you would get. You might be representing proprietors today, but might be representing generic pharmaceuticals tomorrow. So you need to have a balanced approach. You cannot, but have your presence on the most popular platforms first.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
what is your
think
take.
yeah, so Subhash pointed out something very important. If that is a platform that has been tapped,
Ma'am, your voice. There is some problem
yeah.
with your audio
Subhash pointed
device.
out something very that has been tapped, it means that at those places. What becomes challenging is creating enough content that sets you apart. Is there still hear me now?
Now it's clear. Now
Can
it's
you
clear.
hear me? Okay. I'm saying when you have a platform that already has a huge audience and it has been tapped, it means simply that that is where you need to be. The challenge with these platforms is that you have to create content a lot faster to really stand out, right? So this is, but having said that, where people usually fail is that they think of building their personal brand or building a digital footprint as a sprint rather than a marathon when it is actually a marathon. It is a game for the long term, so you probably won't get enough views or enough connections in the first 1 month, but within the next 3 months or 4 months of consistently posting content, you will start building an audience, and that's what you need to really remember. LinkedIn is a great platform, always recommended for professionals. Quora as a
Professionals.
platform does really well in certain circumstances, but for lawyers, it leads to lack of control over the content that is put out. So I don't usually recommend that. Email marketing is a fantastic way. If you're not so comfortable with your video presence, podcasts is a great way to start building out a digital asset that has lesser competition comparatively. But what's key here is that you don't have to be everywhere. Pick one platform. If you're just starting out, especially pick one platform and stick to it. That is what will lead to success. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be an Instagram star, a YouTube star, and a LinkedIn star. You just need to be at one place because that's where you will find your audience. So, in that sense, pick whatever you are personally comfortable with. If you're more comfortable with videos or microblogs or pictures, then Instagram or YouTube work better. If you're more comfortable with audio, then something like a podcast works really well. If you're more comfortable with short content pieces of writing, then LinkedIn works really well. And it's fine for you to be at either of these places.
In
But
fact, to the
pick one
extent
and stick to it.
that even Lawyers Club of India, I remember like for several queries are answered there. But that raises a very interesting point that you should only give your opinions, your advisory, even if you're giving like a single sentence, one liner, you should avoid it because you never know if it is unless you are an expert, you're 100% sure because you never know how what is the correct answer if
Yeah.
there's a different law. So you should avoid giving opinions, advisories on public forums,
Yeah.
Quora or LCI or any other place.
Yeah, unless you are the expert, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
the whole point of building your brand to be an expert is actually doing the work that is done off social media. A lot of people
Yes.
become digital first, but that's not how it happens. You have to actually do the work in real life. You have to learn new things. You have to continuously study and upgrade your knowledge and use that to build content. So this doesn't have to be content first. This has to be your knowledge first, your expertise first, and that finds a way of expression online.
Great, sir. As Subhash sir mentioned of Lawyers Club India, I know a lawyer who has made his entire career literally out of that law. So that is the extent of heights you can achieve from these online platforms.
Yes, yes.
So, sir, Arvind sir, what is your take on it? Um, do you really think that uh, being on a platform early gives a first mover advantage, or there is nothing like that? What do you say about it? Because I have seen that many people like Sandeep Kochar sir on LinkedIn and even Shashi Tharoor sir, he was early adopters of Twitter. They have made a tremendous following for them in those places just by being first at in adopting the platforms. What is your take on it?
Anubhav, I think Shashi Tharoor or Mr. Kochar, if they have made a great name, it's not because they were there first, but it's because they are really good. Right?
That is one of the
They
Yeah.
are absolutely great in their content. They are prompt, they are smart. Right. So yes, there is nothing like first mover advantage, and I never believed in a first mover advantage thing. You have to be good. You have to be passionate in what you are doing. You have to be expert of what you are doing. You should enjoy the work that you are doing, and you will definitely receive your due acknowledgement for sure.
all right. I understood. So Arvind sir has made it pretty clear that there is no perceived advantage of having a LinkedIn account a year prior to your competitors. There's nothing like that. All right.
Hmm.
So with this, do we have any other question in the chat box? I can't see anything. Not able to copy articles. Can it post it on your group? Yeah, okay. So this article Arvind sir has shared of economic times, I will share it on our WhatsApp groups. All right. So I think we have addressed most of the questions. I'm also done with the questions I had. So I think we can now end this session. So thank you so much, Arvind sir, Subhash sir, and Aruna ma'am for being here. So for being patient for 2 hours and actually staying engaged with the audience. Thank you to
I'm
everyone
so
who has.
sorry, I've been having tech problems.
It's
Telling
totally
you
fine,
tech
ma'am.
is
We
not
all have.
everything, just one
Yeah,
part.
can't be. Something are inevitable.
I think
I
you
would
will
like.
get stuck in traffic. It always happens.
These are better than traffic problems for sure.
Yeah, true,
That's
true.
I would also like to thank everyone who has been connected to us and who has actually stayed this long and listened to all of us. Thank you so much. This shows the
Most
level of
welcome, guys.
dedication. All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
With
Thank you.
this, all right.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Have a good day. Break a leg.